I tend to think of like spanking and stuff as more of a last resort. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if possible, taking things away, taking toys and privileges and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's an incentive too to be good, to get the thing back.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, you know that spanking's not always the best one when your kid's like, can I just get a spanking?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I think the other thing I picked is better.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I just want a spanking so I can get back out in the front yard playing with my ball, And so then finally, the reason that discipline is preferable to, say, laissez-faire style of parenting is that it leads your child to a destination, right?
Yeah. Back to talking about it as a path.
Yeah, righteousness and peace.
We kind of got into this in our creation episode. We talked about that God sort of has this upward spiral of life.
Yeah.
And hell is like a downward spiral of death.
Yes.
Ever shrinking and ever going downward,
Yeah, great. That's
And
a
it's
great
like, so
idea.
your child took one step towards hell, It's like, it's fine,
It's just one step.
Yeah. But it matters. He's on the wrong path now. So
Yeah. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today, we are continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And in this episode, we're going to discuss saying number 12, which is, do not withhold discipline from a child. So I guess we'll start by reading this and go from there.
Yeah.
So Proverbs 23, verses 13 through 14, do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with the rod, they will not die. Punish them with the rod and save them from death. So
Yeah. Now that everyone's tuned off, it's obviously a really uncomfortable subject, I think, and controversial today. I tried to do some research to bring like a statistic or something of like what percentage of parents still do this, but there's just like, it's nothing coherent. Like one study will say one thing and another. Probably people are uncomfortable answering honestly if they have, But one thing they all agreed on was that nobody should be doing it. So
yeah, corporal punishment used to be totally non-controversial. Now it's totally taboo.
I think that it's one of the many, many things where there's a false dilemma. It's like either you don't practice corporal punishment or you're a hateful abuser of the child.
Right.
It's like there's a difference between beating and spanking. Like
that's one great thing about this passage in the sayings of the wise is it begins with do not withhold discipline from a child.
Yeah.
So that it gives you the proper context for it, in that it's the context of disciplining a child. And discipline is a much bigger process than a spanking.
Yeah.
So we got to keep it in context as we discuss what this means. So I will say that in my life, corporal punishment was allowed even in schools when I was a kid, legally anyway, here in the state of Tennessee. When I was in high school, the only time I witnessed corporal punishment in school was one of the football players in my health class was carrying on during the film strip we were watching. That dates me right there. We had film strips in class. And the football coach was the class teacher. And so he didn't like that he was making a ruckus during the film strip. So I was just watching the film strip, and all of a sudden I just hear somebody getting paddled. And he made the guy, I'll show you, he made the guy go like this, stick his hands on the desk, and smile at a girl
that he was talking to.
Yeah, while he was giving him the paddling, he had to sit there and smile at the girl the whole time. And he just wailed on his butt, 3 or 4 times. And so I was like, okay, that was right after I moved to Tennessee. So I was like, where am I?
Yeah.
But that was.
He never. I bet you never carried on in his class though.
I didn't join the football team either. Okay, so one of the interesting things about this passage, though, is it points out that there are many behaviors in life that lead to death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, what are some of the big ones? playing in traffic.
Yeah, like very
Right.
literal ones, right?
Yeah.
Or or swimming. My daughter would probably drown herself immediately given the opportunity.
Just jump in the
She
pool with
loves the pool, but
no
yeah,
guidance
yeah,
around her. Handling a gun, right, without training. We hear tragic stories all the time about a little kid who either shoots themselves or shoots their sibling
hmm
because they find a gun and they have no idea what to do with it,
yeah,
right? I mean, those are things that if you are if you really love your kid, you're going to teach them about.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter what kind of consequences you have to bring to make sure they learn the lesson.
You can't let them wait to experience the natural consequence of it.
Yes,
Right?
right, exactly.
It's in those cases, it makes a lot of sense to be like, okay, you can't go digging around for dad's guns in his bedroom. Like
Hmm.
you have to get smacked for that because that's a fraction of what would happen if you actually play with them.
Yes, yeah.
And I like that. This is what separates us and other high intelligence animals like mammals and birds from low intelligence animals. Like if you've ever, um, if you've ever like looked in at a mess of frog eggs or something, right? They lay like 100 eggs, and only one of those statistically grows to adulthood,
Yeah,
right? And has its own eggs
very small.
because they just leave them and they don't give them any guidance. So then they're hatched and they're immediately eaten by a fish, or not, like maybe they get eaten as eggs. And that's
Yeah.
like the difference between mothers, which is like the defining trait of all like mammals, right? Is that they there is some level of parental care, and even dogs and cats, you observe them like they nip at their kids, or like a mama duck, if they're not following in line, they might nip at their kids sometimes to get them
Mhm.
back in line. And that's natural and logical behavior because if you just let the little animal with no experience that hasn't developed a healthy fear of snakes or tigers or
Foxes.
60-mile-an-hour death machines on the road,
Mhm.
like they have to be taught to be afraid of going near those things
Yeah.
because they can't just be reasoned into it.
Yeah, well, and it's also true though that the corporal punishment done correctly is not deadly.
Yeah,
Like if you don't just beat your
or
kid to
or
death,
injurious even.
yeah, or
Yeah,
yeah, even injurious or bruise or anything, right? Just gives them a smack of pain. Um, that the judicious use of that is a punishment that can guide a child away from a potentially deadly behavior.
yeah. And there are a lot of ways where we could get more allegorical with Solomon here, right? And say all kinds of moral behaviors lead to moral death, to spiritual death,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
even just with the very literal, physical death, there are things where that becomes so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think any parent who loves their child, right, would want to correct them to make sure they don't practice these deadly behaviors, right? And and any child who receives correction from a parent, to save them from death, would realize that they're loved.
Yeah.
So,
And that's we'll read that in another proverb, Proverbs 3:11-12. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves as a father the son he delights in. Right? Like, and that's an interesting because I've heard talking about the father and the son relationship specifically there. I've heard someone say before that mothers want their kids to be happy, and fathers want them to be good, right? And that goes with kind of the trope that a mom might coddle or comfort more, and a dad will be harsher, which I think typically is true, and is typically why you need each parent because
mhm,
because they probably overcorrect for each other there typically.
yeah,
But that is what like a good father wants of his son, is not just that he gets what he wants, is that he be a good man.
yeah, and always seeking continual improvement,
Yeah.
you know. And so we can't keep talking about this topic without bringing up the most famous
hmm
passage on corporal punishment that people tend to quote. If they don't know anything else about the Bible, they seem to know this passage in Proverbs 13:24, which says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them."
Yeah, and I think people get caught up on the word rod there in
Hmm.
particular. That certainly I think we could see mostly as like a cultural thing for the time. That was kind of the go-to way of corporal punishment.
Yeah.
But uh, I had I had a friend who will leave anonymous, whose father actually had some sort of wooden instrument he had made the words like the rod of discipline carved onto it.
Wow.
And it's like a little bit like,
Well, I mean, if you think about the context for the people of Israel, if your dad was a shepherd,
yeah, he's already
he's
gonna have
likely
it.
got
Yeah.
a rod in his hand. And so when you are, messing around, he's like, hey.
I was just glad you weren't a butcher.
Yeah. I was just an engineer. There's no end to what I could create.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more cruel, right? And dangerous to leave a child undisciplined than it is to say give them a spanking or something.
Yeah.
A judicious one. And why is that, right? Because our original saying that we're studying today from the 30 sayings of the wise tells us that though the rod doesn't kill, some of these behaviors do. And it's love that compels us to make sure that the lesson is learned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hate, as this proverb here, 13:24 says, it's hate or failure to show proper concern, right? It's a what's the word I'm looking for?
It's the
It's
absence
an
of love.
exaggeration or
Yeah. The deprivation of love.
yeah.
If you want to define hate that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It uses the hyperbole, right? It's using the word hate as hyperbole here to get your attention. But basically, it would be, as a parent, your failure to show proper concern that would stop you from punishing your kid when he's headed for danger.
This is one way I think to look at like the verses about election, right? Like Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Right?
Mhm.
God disciplines those he loves. It's like some people he leaves, he lets them. They want to, rebel. They want to pursue their own will. He lets them. His chosen people, Israel and the church, he actually disciplines them.
Yeah.
To try to keep them on the right track.
Well, because discipline and love preserve life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And leniency and carelessness may cost a life.
Yeah.
So, as the question is, as a parent, how important is your child's life to you?
Yeah.
So, a lot of parents, though, they may say, well, I just don't want to strike my child. I don't want to cause my child any pain in their life,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the cause of the pain. Is that really necessary? I think that's a good question. It's not always necessary to induce pain as a punishment, because you mentioned natural consequences earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's a natural consequence. So what sense would it make for me to give a kid a spanking, say, if they already touched the hot stove and burned their hand? You'd be like, whoa, that hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, you don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but if it's something like we talked about before, running into the street, chasing a ball, right. Yeah, it has to, like, that's such a huge error. If you let it go uncorrected, eventually it leads to death.
Yeah, because instruction and experience have to match up. So if you've been instructing your kid, don't go in the road, it's very dangerous, and the first time their ball goes in the road, they run out there without looking, there's no car coming, and they get their ball back, and they're like, Dad's an idiot.
Yeah.
I don't know what his problem is with the road.
Statistically, only 10% of the time will there be a car coming. So really,
Well, I mean, so that if you don't induce a pain there, then there's no association in their mind that what I just did was potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
So you have to couple it. So you're giving an artificial consequence. Now, does that always have to be a spanking? Because the rod is figurative here.
Yeah.
I mean, in this thing, they're not going to list every possible way you could punish your kid. They just say the rod, as a go-to. Well, I mean, you might know your kid better, that if they're out playing with their ball, maybe that's their most favorite thing in the world. And you say, well, if you're going to run out in the road like I told you not to, then I'm taking your ball away and you're going to have to go sit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to think of like spanking and stuff as more of a last resort. Like, if possible, taking things away, taking toys and privileges and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's an incentive too to be good, to get the thing back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know that spanking's not always the best one when your kid's like, can I just get a spanking?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I think the other thing I picked is better.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I just want a spanking so I can get back out in the front yard and play with my ball, But yeah, so the best solution, is the wisdom of the parent. The word rod, as everybody trips up over that, is just a figurative placeholder.
Well, I think the big thing there, like figuratively speaking, is that it's kind of unyielding, right? So whatever approach you take, you have to be firm
Yeah,
and not let the 3-year-old push the 30-year-old around.
yeah. You just want to make sure, okay, if you love your kid, that a poor decision that your child makes has an immediate consequence
Yeah.
and a lesson they can learn from it. And so, just giving them instruction, it's like, hey, look, next time there might be a car coming and you get hurt. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like,
It's that,
what are you, a frog that spawns its kids and leaves them?
right.
And so because like the animal kingdom, the only ones that grow up are the ones that got lucky and happen to survive an encounter, and then they learn to be afraid of everything.
I'll tell you where that can help, though, is we had 3 boys, and I used to tell them on vacation when we were at some landmark place or historical place or out in public, and we're going to be needing to stick together and everything. And I say, now, we had 3 kids, so we can afford to lose one, so make sure you stay close. And they'd be like, wait, is he serious?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember me saying, probably had a bigger impact on
The
your
thing
little
I
brothers.
remember from you guys when we were growing up is that when we did get spanked, you always told us that there was nothing that we could do that would make you stop loving us, and nothing that we could do that would make God stop loving us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if like the truth of that is you do discipline a child if you love them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's obvious, again, that's like an obvious difference between something that's kind of a measured and controlled response, which is like, well, here's the thing you did, here's the punishment, and I still love you, versus like you start doing something they don't like and they're just like smack in the face. Like that's a completely different.
Yeah.
You're also, and you're then modeling to them to lose your self control and your temper whenever something happens that you don't like. So that's what they're going to learn from you.
Yeah.
But if it's like a measured and a thought out, deliberate thing, it sends a different message.
Yeah. I mean, don't just take Caleb's word and my word for it as a couple of dads or whatever, but, always go back to Scripture. And so we already read some Old Testament passages, and here's a New Testament passage that quotes one of those passages, Hebrews 12, verses 4 through 11.
In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it."
So I think there's some really cool things we can learn from this passage, and the reason that we wanted to include it is because it shows how discipline is described as a process, right? It takes place over a period of time. It involves a period of pain, and it has a long-term destination to it, which in this passage it said was holiness, righteousness, and peace. And so it's not just a one-time event, like I gave my kid a spanking, or
Yeah.
I gave my kid a punishment, whatever it might be. So, why? What is our tendency? Why do we sometimes, want to err towards withholding discipline, right? Because we think, oh, I want to shield my child from pain. I don't want to be the source of pain for my child. They'll associate me with the pain,
Yeah.
right? And we think also that we can advise them with instruction, but for things that only experience can teach them.
Yeah. I mean, that's why do we not put 5-year-olds in charge of stuff? Like they don't have any experience. They don't have the wisdom or the reason to sort those things out. So you can't really reason with them yet. They have to develop experiences there. And I think as parents, like in our culture, because this is such a taboo topic, I think a lot of us would rather be liked by our children than respected by them. I mean, the passage in Hebrews said how discipline's unpleasant at the time, but later we respected our fathers for it.
Hmm.
And look at how many people grow up not to respect their parents today. I'm sure they like them as a kid because they get all the junk food and screen time that they want, or whatever the case may be. But they don't grow up to respect them.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
whether that's conscious or not, it might be subconscious. It's because they weren't given what was actually good for them.
Hmm. I mean, if you think of it like as for older kids, like a dad who like wants to live vicariously through his son, he doesn't teach him to respect women, but he says, go out and, have your exploits and come back home and tell me about them and stuff
Mm.
like that. You like try to be his buddy and, all that. And it's just like, no, you should be teaching your kid to control his sexuality and
Yeah.
control his behavior
Well,
and be respectful of women and, not try to relive your high school days or something through your
it's a
kid's life.
confusion of roles as well.
Mhm.
Like, you're not your kid's friend. You're the parent, and there's a
Mhm.
specific role. There's a reason
Yeah.
God gave you them as a child. He's giving you friends too, so you have those relationships. But you wouldn't treat your friend the way you're supposed to treat a child. They would resent
Right.
you just as much,
That's true.
if not more, especially
Yeah.
immediately more. You don't confuse those roles.
So the reason discipline makes more sense than, say, the laissez-faire parenting style is that discipline is a path, right? It's not this one-time event, right? You have to think long term. We've seen in all of these sayings of the wise, they're trying to get you to think long term,
Yeah.
and this one is too. Is trying to say, hey, don't get caught up in the one-time event, like, oh, he's gonna hate me because I cause pain for them. But you think about long term, they're gonna have a long life because you discipline them.
Well, like in the last saying, we looked at discipline, we looked at instruction, right? Applying your heart to instruction, your ear to knowledge, and we talked about discipline. We brought up our interview with Michael McHenry, the baseball player, his favorite verse, or one of his favorite, from Psalm 119:9, right? And how he applied that whole passage to like discipline
Mm-hmm.
and to in a sports context. Like,
Yeah.
it's very much a path or a process, right? It's not an event. You don't just go work out once and be like, all right, well, I'm ready.
I'm a pro baseball player
It's like
now.
each workout is kind of miserable. Just one workout. You're like, why would I do that? And but if you do 1,000 of them, suddenly you're in much better shape. Or in the sport, like you were saying, it's this process. The discipline is a process, not just a one time event. It's also like when you see the highlights on Sports Center or whatever, and it's like, what does an athlete's life consist of? It consists of making the game winning catch and then like getting girls and money and drinks after the game. Like, like, no, it's like the hours and hours of work put into making himself capable of doing that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about it not just being a single event is that it's part of a story. It's part of a whole life story for your kid. Like even like a baseball game. Keeping that analogy going, instruction and experience and the events all need to work hand in hand and be in a overall game. Like they're in the context of the overall game. So like a guy who makes an amazing play in the outfield, right, and everybody cheers. And then he forgets that that's not the third out, and he throws the ball into the stands to some kid that he sees.
He just ruined it.
Yeah, and then like all the guys that are on base are like, "All right," and they run around, and score because he threw the ball out of play, and he thought, "Oh, I thought there were 3 outs." Well, no, you're wrong.
Too bad. He should have paid attention.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen stuff like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
See it. But
that's another good example, right? It's like a sport involves strategy, like a long-term strategy. It doesn't really matter if you can make the one really good play, and that's what everybody like. Like when you're a kid in the backyard, you're always like, all right, it's bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, full count in the World Series, and it's like that will never happen to anyone. But there are going to be 1,000 times where somebody's up to bat in the bottom of the third, and like nobody's scored yet, and like nobody will ever remember that at bat. But like It's just the process. It's a long-term strategy. Every little thing matters. So you train yourself
Yeah.
to treat them all like they matter.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So, and what you're trying to do with discipline, whether it's artificial consequences when a kid gets away with something and there is no consequence and you find out, is you're trying to make sure that the instruction and the experience match together. Because if they listen to your instruction and then they don't follow it, and then there's no consequence, they'll be like, that was dumb advice. So you're trying to bring them in the line because someday that advice is going to be important, even though the first time the odds were that it didn't harm them, right?
Yeah.
And so then finally, the reason that discipline is preferable to, say, laissez-faire style of parenting is that it leads your child to a destination, right?
Yeah. Back to talking about it as a path.
Yeah, righteousness and peace.
We kind of got into this in our creation episode. We talked about that God sort of has this upward spiral of life.
Yeah.
And hell is like a downward spiral of death.
Yes.
Ever shrinking and ever going downward,
Yeah, great. That's
and
a
it's
great
like, so
idea.
your child took one step towards hell, it's like, it's fine,
It's just one step.
Yeah. But it matters. He's on the wrong path now. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's cool. So Caleb, you're our official Biblocus historian. You did a little legwork
it was really hard.
this time. You looked up some of the church
I
fathers.
found a website that did all the work for me.
Shh, don't tell anybody. So you found some quotes, an interesting one from Clement of Alexandria. This is in his book called The Instructor, book 1, chapter 9.
How appropriate.
Yeah, he had something to say about the benefits of discipline. So.
Yeah, this is a really cool analogy that he gives here. For it is indeed noble not to sin, but it is also good for the sinner to repent, just as it is best to always be in good health, but well to recover from disease. So he commands by Solomon, strike thou thy son with the rod, that thou mayest deliver his soul from death. And again, abstain not from chastising thy son, but correct him with the rod, for he will not die. I love that analogy. Like, it's like at the moment you sin, it is like what you give up because it's all done. It's all over now. It's kind of like we talked about Job. Like, just because a man is downtrodden, is he supposed to stop pursuing righteousness?
Yeah.
And that analogy is so obvious. It's like, yeah, obviously it would be ideal to not get sick, but sometimes you do. So when you're sick, you get better. That's what you do.
That's your goal.
So repentance, which is often brought about by discipline, right? Or
consequences.
By being confronted about the sin, because instinctively we'd rather cling to it and not repent of it. But that's like getting better. And it reminded me as well of the way you like to teach when Jesus says, right, it would be better to cut off your hand than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And everybody's like, he didn't mean that literally, right? And you say, I think if we could ask Jesus about it, he'd say, yeah, you're right, that's pretty harsh. So why don't you just not sin in the first place? It's a lot like that. It's like, it would be better to not have sinned, right? But you already have, so cut it out, right? Discipline yourself. The cutting off of the hand is obviously figurative, but it's the same kind of principle. It's like, you've sinned, so you need to correct it.
Yeah, because it would be worse to leave them in sin when it inevitably happens, than it would be, to correct them. And so newsflash, like none of our kids are going to be perfect, except for, some kids. I don't know. Sorry, kid. But it's, so that's keep your child on the right path. As you're constantly, it's like guardrails, you're constantly kicking them back into the right path. So speaking of guiding people and guiding animals, there's an interesting passage from Ezekiel that's relevant here about pastoring, about being a good shepherd. We read this back when we studied Ezekiel, but we wanted to read it again here because it's pretty cool. Ezekiel 34, 1-6 says, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured." You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them. So it's kind of this so selfish. Like, if you don't discipline your kid because, well, I think I would feel bad being the cause of their pain. Like, you're putting your own needs first. You're saying, well, emotionally that's hard for me, and so I'm not going to correct them.
Yeah.
And then that leaves them scattered on the hillsides, in direct threat of predators and things like in this analogy.
Animals,
yeah. So.
Yeah, and this was given to it says the leaders of Israel, right? So that's like the priests and elders and such who did such a great job in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And then, but that tendency is still with us. So we've had another church father letter. This one's from Augustine, and he's addressing the same problem, but with priests or pastors, right?
And he references this Ezekiel passage.
He quotes Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So this is from Augustine in his letter to Donatus, saying, if a bad will ought always to be left to its own freedom, why are negligent pastors reproved? And why is it said to them, ye have not brought back the wandering sheep, ye have not sought the perishing? You also are sheep belonging to Christ. You bear the Lord's mark in the sacrament which you have received, but you are wandering and perishing. Let us not, therefore, incur your displeasure, because we bring back the wandering and seek the perishing. For it is better for us to obey the will of the Lord, who charges us to compel you to return to his fold, than to yield consent to the will of the wandering sheep, so as to leave you to perish. Say not, therefore, what I hear you are constantly saying, I wish thus to wander, I wish thus to perish. For it is better that we should, so far as is in our power, absolutely refuse to allow you to wander and perish. There's a little bit of, kind of like politics or hierarchy involved there, but it's really interesting, right? I mean, I think if we think about what pastors and priests are supposed to be like in our mind, they're just supposed to be nice to everybody and just kind of passive, just always smiling, always like confirming, I think this is poignant. I think, that's probably a tendency in our culture that could be challenged, right? The pastor or priest should be an authority figure,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a shepherd. It's in the root of the word, right?
You think like a parent should also be an authority figure too?
The jury's out on that, but yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing again all over.
Yeah.
And just the failure to guide, the failure to discipline.
But the point there is like, I guess in saying, look, I'm as a minister, I'm a shepherd of God's flock. And if I allow them to wander, I have to answer for that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not doing them a favor by just kind of smiling and nodding as they tell me, how depraved they are. And I'm like, well, we just accept everybody here. It's like you're not going to, you're failing in your job that God gave you as a leader.
And also the parent who fails to discipline.
Yeah. And it's the same.
Failing in your job.
It's the same principle.
Yeah. So interesting story from Jesus' ministry. He, also known as the Good Shepherd, right? He had this experience in Matthew 9, which we've read several times lately. Matthew 9:35 through 38. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field.
I mean, that's like exactly what Augustine was saying, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, that's our job, because the old shepherds didn't do it, And like you always like to point out, we're the answer to the prayer as Christians, right? Mm-hmm. And, Jesus didn't say, good thing I'm here, I'll just magically fix everything. He wants to work through his people, through his body, the body of Christ, the church.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you care, if you love, you will discipline, right?
Yeah.
And so so as a parent, right, you are also part of God's plan to save the soul of your child, just like these pastors are
Yeah.
part of the plan to save their parishioners, and the shepherds, their sheep,
Mhm.
and the parents, their children. So if you care, how can you not discipline, right?
Right.
So the wise words takeaway from this week is discipline your children, and both their instruction and experience will lead them to God. And that's where you're trying to teach them lessons, but if it doesn't match up with experience,
Yeah,
they're
that's
just going to
true.
be like, that's a dumb lesson.
Yeah, if you always tell them, but don't do anything to back it up,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not going to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like Caleb said, what is it? 10% of the time there might be a car coming by. The first 9 times they chase their ball. My dad's dumb. I can go out in the road and get my ball. I don't have to look both ways.
Yeah,
And then the 10th time, no more kid.
yeah,
So yeah, so if you really love your kids, you'll discipline them. And to use the same hyperbole as the Bible, if you don't, then it's a way of hating your kid, because you ultimately their own destruction is what it leads to.
It's also, I meant to bring this up earlier. I mean, I kind of did, because we talked about how kids may not grow up to respect their parents if they're not disciplined. But so if you don't do that, you're setting them up to not be able to understand the fifth commandment, right? Honor your father and mother.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that starts actually with the parent doing their job.
yeah.
And so if you've done that, you like pulled the rug out from under them, and then they're not going to know how to keep that command.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because, what you want is a consistent application of the instruction that you're giving your kid. And you want the experiences that they have to match the instruction so that they learn the lessons from the instruction. And it's hard to be consistent about that. But one way that you can provide consistent instruction and experience and a community around your kid that supports all of that, Caleb,
Go to church. Unless the pastor's a softie, like we were talking about.
yeah, he's a bad shepherd. But
Probably a lesson, you should go to church, and then also there's a little bit of advice here that we have even for the leaders, is that
that's true.
you shouldn't be afraid to actually fulfill the role God's chosen you for.
Right. Well, that's why you want to find a church, right? Because you want to find a group of people who are striving to put God's word into practice, including all of these teachings on discipline, whether it be, how you instruct the members of your church or your brothers and sisters, when they stray, and help lead them back, or whether it's disciplining your own children.
Yeah.
So join a community of people who are pursuing God's word and pursuing discipline. The path of discipline.
Yeah.
The path of discipline. It's long term. So, you have anything to add?
I did want to. I've sort of passed already. I had meant to mention in like everybody's favorite Psalm 23, right? The Lord is my shepherd. In verse 4, one of the things he says is, "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me."
Oh yeah, yeah.
But the like we were talking about, mama ducks keeping their ducks in a line. Sheep are dumb and they don't stay in line. So the main use for the staff is to smack them and push them back in line when they're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's to David. He sees that as comforting.
And it's saving too,
Yeah.
like all these passages have said. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad you added that. So he's Caleb and I'm Timothy. Thank you for listening to Bible discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.